marking the 200th anniversary of the Peterloo massacre.
At least 18 people were killed when forces charged a peaceful protest in St Peter's Fields in Manchester on the 16th of August 1890.
It became one of the most defining moments in social reform in British history. Even 200 years on, we can still get a snapshot of how 19th century Manchester looked.
Our political correspondent Hannah Miller went on a walking tour to find out more about one of the city's darkest chapters.
The 16th of August 1819 was one of the most tragic days in Manchester history. A crowd of up to 60,000 people gathered in St Peter's Fields, and they gathered for a pro-democracy, anti-poverty rally. It wasn't a riot. I think it's really important because it's fundamental to the democracy in this country and the people getting the vote, and the fact that people were attacked and were injured and died on the streets here in Manchester means we should never ever forget what happened here.
Walking through the streets that have changed almost beyond recognition over 200 years.
This was St Peter's Field. So we were standing here in August 1819. This is Field.
It was here that crowds gathered to campaign for the vote at a time of high taxes, mass unemployment and no MPs to represent almost 1 million working people in Manchester and the surrounding towns.
For the employers of the town, they were not impressed with the radicals.
But the authorities were frightened and organised soldiers and local businessmen to charge into the demonstration.
They stopped moving their horses through the crowd, and the crowd scattering, they're sabring people and slashing at the banners and everything. Their sabres had been freshly sharpened. Of the nearly 700 that were injured, many had multiple injuries.
A battle that it's claimed helped ordinary people to win the vote, as well as leading to the creation of trade unions and the Guardian newspaper.
I, as a proud Mancunian, am very proud of Manchester as a radical city, and to come and hear this today really makes you appreciate the enormity of the occasion.
Why should people care?
Because I think there's ongoing issues about democracy.
We need to know more about what's gone before to try and learn the lessons rather than just sail along with what's happening.
Do you feel like we have learned the lessons?
No.
No, not much has changed.
I mean, I don't come out in protest, I have to say, but doesn't stop me getting angry about some things.
What makes you angry?
I think a lot of the things that I thought when I was younger would change for the better, and things are changing, like the housing situation. You look at the number of people on the streets.
And as people start to learn more in this anniversary month, are there still voices unheard 200 years on? Hannah Miller, ITV News, Manchester.
Well, earlier I spoke to actor Neil Bell, who's fronting a new visitor's video guide to explain the story of Peterloo. He also played Samuel Bamford in Mike Leigh's film about the massacre. I asked him what impact playing that role had on him.
I was able to really immerse myself in a man who I'd never heard of before, and he's a great guy, you know, there's a lot of humour, a lot of warmth, a big work ethic, you know, as well as his political views, which came from a pre-industrial era, which was kind of another time. So it put me in touch with another world, really, which kind of predates the Victorian era, which I'd never really thought about before.
Are you surprised how few people in Manchester and beyond actually know about Peterloo?
Yes and no. I knew about it, but I didn't know the details of it. I'm not surprised that not many people know about it, just because that type of thing tends to not get talked about. It's not a particularly heroic event in our history. A lot of people obviously were killed and injured, and also the people who organised it ended up being the people who were punished for it as well, and there wasn't a lot of justice served out to anybody. So it tends to be the sort of event that kind of gets pushed under the carpet to a certain extent. It's not the sort of thing I think that gets publicised very much.
I'm in St Peter's Square, which took its name from St Peter's Church, not far from the site of what was typically known as the Peterloo massacre.
You're walking around the city doing this visitor film. You're surrounded by people who haven't got a clue about these events, haven't got a clue about where they took place. It's quite an important task to be passing that sort of information on.
I found myself during the research for the film as well as afterwards now, I spent a lot of time touching walls, parts of brick walls, buildings, the parts of this history, of our history that are still with us are quite few and far between, especially in a place like Manchester, which is constantly being redeveloped, and we'll lose in a lot of these places a few corners, a few walls. We still have, I think, a couple of weavers' cottages and a couple of buildings standing, which were there on the day, but there's not many, and it's quite, this kind of heritage is disappearing around us, you know.
But it's so important, isn't it, to not just have those places you can go and physically make contact with, but to never forget the role this event played.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think people have to realise that in order to win things like democracy and to have a say in your own future, you really do have to fight for it. You'd be easily forgiven for thinking that things just happen now and we don't have to become political animals. But of course, in the past and certainly around the world at the moment now, people are waking up to the fact that they do have to now become political again.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, true.
Okay, well, let's get on to sport now, because there's